Barefoot running, is it the proper way to run or is it simply a gimmick? Now, 75% of recreational runners incur an injury over the course of a year. Now, the majority of these injuries occur in the knee and lower extremity. As a result, the fields of sports medicine, orthopedics, and podiatry have rapidly increased to help prevent these particular injuries. However, these technological advances have been proven unsuccessful. As a result, alternative solutions to running-related injuries have received a lot of attention recently, especially after Christopher McDougall's popular book, Born to Run, was published in 2009. The popularity of barefoot running has exploded. Now, barefoot running alters biomechanics, which results in a greater front foot strike or plantar flexion. According to barefoot running advocates, this pattern reduces the risk of long-term injury by reducing the impact forces. Now, traditional running shoes employ an elevated or cushioned heel, which results in a rear foot strike pattern. And according to barefoot running advocates, this rear foot strike pattern results in greater high loading rate impacts and high knee energy absorption. Now, barefoot running advocates infer that these particular mechanisms contribute to the high prevalence of running-related injuries. Also, barefoot running advocates suggest that front foot striking patterns are associated with a reduction in the loading rates and knee energy absorptions, all of which reduce long-term injury. You can see in this illustration on the left that is rear foot striking or running with the heel and it's making contact first. It's more dorsiflexed. In contrast, on the right, the athlete is employing a front foot strike pattern or landing with the metatarsals. There's more plantar flexion. Now, research has shown that front foot striking or barefoot running and minimalistic running, they're used oftentimes interchangeably, also reduces knee flexion, knee adduction, and hip external rotation. Furthermore, this increased knee flexion angle provides cushioning and greater compliance, thus more shock absorption to potentially reduce injury. Research has demonstrated that front foot striking can reduce peak joint reactive forces by 12%, which corresponds in a 12% reduction in the patellofemoral joint stress. This is associated with reduced lower limb injury. Now, studies have also demonstrated that front foot striking results in higher cadence or stride frequency. This increased cadence may protect against impact-related injuries. For example, one study reported that impact forces from front foot striking were 58% of body weight. In contrast, the impact forces for rear foot striking were 189% of body weight. Now, these increased forces and collisions are associated with injury. Now, as a result of front foot striking, the impact transient is eliminated or considerably reduced due to lack of heel strike. This occurs through eccentric loading of the posterior calf musculature. Now, as a result, there's an increased risk of Achilles tendon and post-tibialis muscle injury. There's also increased stress and wear and tear of the articular cartilage as a result of front foot striking. Also, front foot striking places the metatarsals under greatest stress. So overall, front foot striking shifts the mechanical demand from the knee to the ankle joint. Research has also examined inversion and eversion of the foot when running. Now, one study reported that runner inversion was pretty much the same regardless of the condition, whether front foot striking or rear foot striking. They also reported that the runner's inversion remained constant regardless if there was increases or decreases in speed. So overall, there was no significant difference in the degree of inversion from the various testing conditions, barefoot, running shoe, etc. However, this same study reported for the minimalistic running, there was an increased eversion in tibial internal rotation. So on the left, you can see the foot is everted or foot eversion. On the right, foot inversion. Now, research has indicated that transitioning to barefoot running may not occur innately or without proper instruction. One interesting study showed 1,000 novice barefoot runners, 77% of them continued to employ a rear foot strike pattern. Now, this improper transition to barefoot running results in higher loading rates and higher impact peaks. So it's important to note that those that rear foot strike while barefoot running or with minimalistic shoes or barefoot, they had their loading rates were more than double compared to the rear foot strike pattern runners who were wearing shoes. Thus, rear foot striking while barefoot running or wearing minimalistic shoes places the athlete at an increased risk for injury. Now, it's also important with regards to performance that for coaches to note that strike pattern also significantly impacts running performance. Research has demonstrated that the metabolic efficiency decreases 1% for every 100 grams added to the foot. Interestingly, one study reported a slight 250 gram reduction in weight was associated with a 6.9 improvement in running economy. Thus, research indicates that barefoot running can potentially improve running economy. It's also important to note that this research study controlled for shoe mass and stride frequency. Now, the considerations for performance coaches. What is the take-home point, or what's important for coaches to remember? It's important to consider a wide variety of issues before endorsing either rear foot striking or a front foot striking pattern. First, you have to consider an athlete's injury history before making any recommendations. For example, if you have an athlete with a history of metatarsal injury, they may not want to adopt a front foot strike pattern due to the increased stress that barefoot running or even minimalistic running in shoes has on this particular region. In contrast, if you have an athlete with a history of knee injury, he or she may want to consider adopting minimalistic or front foot striking in order to reduce the stress on the knee joint. However, if the athlete is not having any injury issues, recommending any changes may not be warranted. This is based on research, the aforementioned research, that either changes in running pattern or running surface can dramatically increase an athlete's chances of developing an injury. Now, if the athlete does transition to barefoot running, it's critical that they employ a front foot strike pattern, not a rear foot strike pattern, as already mentioned. If performance is an issue, it's important to remember that for each 100 grams of weight reduced, the metabolic efficiency increases by 1%. Now, barefoot running, it's important to incorporate a sufficient transition period to allow the ankle joint to adapt to the increased workload, or else they can develop an injury. It's also important to consider the potential for a puncture injury while if you're running barefoot running. Thus, minimalistic running might be a better solution. It depends on the running surfaces. It is also important at this point in time, there's no consensus on what is the most efficient way to avoid injuries overall. So thus, additional research is needed.